7th time lucky. How hard can this be? The appointment of Julen Lopetegui as West Ham head coach is due to be announced later on this week. Thank goodness for that. That should never have been as hard as it was. You'll never see the previous attempts. I'm ready for this news. I'm absolutely ready for this news. It seems to be that it's a 2-year contract with an additional year as an option. But only if he qualifies for Europe. Or maybe it's triggered if he qualifies for Europe. I don't know. Look, because it's not official, we're all dealing with rumours here. But yeah, the rumours are that it will be this week. Now, as we understand it, all these coaches are ready to go. They're all, I was going to say they're all here. They never left. When Lopetegui agreed mutually, whatever, to leave Wolverhampton Wanderers, I think we all know what happened there. He kept his house in the Midlands. He stayed here, remained in the UK, and he said to all his staff, get yourself rested up, get yourself ready, get yourself prepared. We're taking a Premier League job. Now, I guess it's easy to put 2 and 2 together and extrapolate that job was going to be the West Ham one. It was certainly one of the ones that he was eyeing up. I don't know anything about anything else, but it was quite clear that he wanted another Premier League job. He said as much in numerous interviews. And he remained here, so, the actions tell you that was the case. He's so well prepared for this job, so that's been what we know to be the case, also what's being leaked from the club and people around it. He's done his due diligence. Not only the club doing it on him, he's done it on the club. He knows exactly what West Ham need. Apparently, he's been going to games as well, but not in he's tried to be as respectful as he can with David Moyes, so he's been sort of sneaking in, basically. Just going in sort of not in the director's box and things like that, not as an official guest of the club, but he's been going to West Ham games. In many respects, he couldn't be more ready. There's no way he could be more ready. He's been working with Tim Steidten for the last little while. I don't know how long, but he's been working with Tim Steidten for the last little while, identifying targets. Everybody knows. In fact, this is the first time. This is what somebody in the club has said to me. This is the first time that West Ham have been this prepared for an upcoming season. I'm not going to say we're ready now, but we know what we want and we know what we should be doing. I'm really excited about this now, and I've had to grow to become excited by it. I think one of the things is it wasn't the appointment that everybody wanted, and I think it is important that we just for one final time reiterate that. But he is who has been chosen, so it's important that we get behind him. And one of the reasons, the main reason that I necessarily didn't want him as West Ham manager is because of what everyone else had said. And what everyone else says encompasses everything. Basically, he falls out with ownership. His football can be a little bit boring, and he's not great at promoting youth players. Now, as I said before in previous videos, I would expect him to come out and try and prove everybody wrong. So I would expect him to start involving youth players more. In fact, the club have indicated that every youth player is going to get their chance. Now, I think it's a little bit of a weird statement because clearly not everyone in the academy is going to get their chance. But I do think that there are going to be the brightest prospects are going to get a chance to shine. If not, that looks like they'll go out on loan and they'll come back. So the club have very much said they expect in 12 months' time, that's when they really expect youngsters to be breaking into the first team on a regular basis. So I think that sounds really, really good. I think West Ham appear to be really well prepared for the next season as well. Particularly in terms of FFP, we're in really, really healthy shape. Those last figures, the 330 million or whatever it was for turnover, are really, really healthy. They're factored in to your spending. West Ham can spend money in this transfer window, make no mistake about it at all. And even just that gives us a really big advantage over a lot of clubs. Aston Villa might be able to spend a little bit of money, but because they've qualified for the Champions League, but they're not going to be able to bolster their squad in the way that they probably would like to, because up until the point that they qualified for the Champions League, they were going to have to sell before they bought. I think qualifying for the Champions League, I think you immediately at the start of next season get 30 million, and that's just before all the other stuff, any progress is calculated. But Wolves have got to sell. I wouldn't be surprised if we end up with a player or two from them. Bournemouth have got to sell. They're not the only ones either. There's a lot of clubs who are going to have to sell or are not going to be able to buy big. As it looks at the moment, West Ham are going to be able to spend over 100 million, and that's without selling anyone. That puts us at a really, really big advantage. I love the fact that the manager's been brought in early or he's been identified early. That's really good. And it goes against the narrative that we've been hearing very recently, particularly from, even Gary Neville said it yesterday in a commentary. It wasn't great how the David Moyes thing was announced. Look, I know I covered it in yesterday's video. It's a load of old rubbish. It really, really is. I cannot wait. I don't think Gary Neville's a bad football commentator, by the way. I don't think he's not the worst. He's far from the worst. But I cannot wait until this lot have all sort of disappeared and dissipated, basically. Because there is so much of this old boys act that's involved in football. Tim Steidten was brought in as a director of football to overhaul the recruitment side of things, to bring in some new scouts, to oversee the development of a scouting department, and to have a hand in identifying West Ham's new manager. He has done nothing but do his job. So for him to come under as much stick as he had, I think is completely out of order, actually. It's unreasonable. When Richard Keys called him, what did he call him, a sneaky weasel? He's not gone behind David Moyes' back. You know, he's not slept with David Moyes' wife. Do you know? So I don't know what came up with that one. Do you know what I mean? He's really not. He was not brought in as Moyes' buddy. He was actually brought in to be David Moyes' boss, realistically. There probably was a contract on the table for David Moyes in one shape or form. And the reason David Moyes didn't want to sign it was because it meant he'd have to go to be a head coach. Which is exactly the terms under which Lopetegui has accepted to take the deal. He's a head coach. So realistically, Tim Steidten's done nothing wrong by going and identifying Moyes' replacement, particularly at the point where David Moyes has looked at that contract that says head coach rather than manager, which probably would have said, look, I would imagine that West Ham were going to pay him the same huge amount of money that he was already on, but they were probably going to say, look, you're not going to have a free run on transfers. And rightly so. I mean, let's be fair, even if you just were to look what happened with Calvin Phillips, look at what happened with Skamaka and things like that. It's not that you have no say, but it's a case of, David, you will not have the final say on transfers. I think that's reasonable in these days of FFP. At the point where Moyes looked at it and thought, I'm not sure I want to sign that, of course, your head of recruitment has to go out and identify potential targets and start lining up a replacement. It would have been completely negligent of West Ham not to do that. So there's been an awful lot of outside noise. And I think a lot of what's been going on now is it's not completely accurate, particularly what's been said about West Ham fans in relation to David Moyes. David Moyes has had a 2-week send-off. A really good 2-week send-off. If you've been on social media, you'll have seen this. I'm not seeing loads of montages put together of all David Moyes' crap stuff. People aren't been putting montages together of us losing by 6 and losing by 5 and that. No, what you've seen are West Ham's best bits. David Moyes going and clapping the fans and the fans singing, we got Super David Moyes, him lifting the trophy, David Moyes of his dad. There has honestly been a 2-week homage to David Moyes. So I don't think he has been treated abysmally. I think he's been given a very, very respectful departure. He was applauded on the pitch last week. This nastiness is actually made up in the pundits' minds. So I think he's had it. I think David Moyes has had a really, really, really good send-off where people have ignored the bad bits for the last 2 weeks and pretty much concentrated on the good stuff and the stuff that he should be remembered for, like the exemplary way he led the club through COVID and the fantastic achievement of winning the trophy, which is not as easy as some said it was, as we've been able to see. Just look at this season, the Conference League. So, you know what? He steered the club really well through Europe, really well through COVID, and he did really, really well. There's no doubt about that at all. But it is time. It's the end of an era, not just his contract. The team are old, the team are decrepit, a lot of them, and they need to go. It's just the right thing to do. A clean sweep, a new old Triggers broom, sweep it out, get a new guy in, new recruitment team, new head coach, new backroom team. David Moyes wasn't even able to put back together his backroom team once he lost Warburton, he lost Paul Nevin. So it's the right thing to do. So goodbye, David Moyes. Thank you for everything. And I'm really pleased that they have appointed Lopetegui and then announcing it early. They're not going to play the game. They're just going to do it this week. I mean, yeah, it probably would have been a bit crass to do it today, like the day after David Moyes. So they're giving it a few days. I've done exactly the same myself. I really would have done. Look, particularly over the stadium move and other bits and pieces as well, I've been as critical of the board as anyone. I really have. But I think they had to replace David Moyes, and they had to do it early, and they had to ask Tim Steidten to do it. I can't see a whole lot wrong with what's happening here. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm actually starting to get quite excited by Lopetegui. I think you can... It's like that whole confirmation bias thing, isn't it? If you look for something, you'll find it. So I think if you look at Lopetegui and you're looking for reasons to be concerned and worried about the appointment, you're going to find them. There's enough in there. You know, you'll see what happened with Spain. You'll see the falling out with Wolves. If what you're looking for is examples of really old players, of him picking old players, you'll find them. You know, you might look at him, bring what's his name, Costa in at Wolves and things like that. You'll find the examples, and eventually you'll find enough ammunition to cement your viewpoint. And I'm a great believer in that confirmation bias on anything. And I try, I'm guilty of it myself, and I sort of try not to, which is why I was quite negative about Lopetegui coming in myself. But now I look at it and I think, right, okay, let me look for positives. And do you know what? You can have a confirmation bias with the positives as well. If you look at it, and actually then you find some positives, and there's some quite good stuff. So actually, if you want to look for young players coming through, you can find young players as well. It's amazing. I mean, you know, look at his record with the Spanish youth teams and all the rest of it. This is very... Once you start to look at it and you scratch below the surface, it becomes harder for you to make a case that he doesn't like youth players. He clearly does. They score some quite exceptional goals, some of his teams as well. There's no doubt about it. He's a possession-based manager. But I think once you start looking at this stuff, then it looks a lot better. I'm not saying that Lopetegui is going to go and thrash Manchester City. I think most teams go to the Etihad and lose against Manchester City. But one thing I do know, we won't do what we did yesterday under him. That's for sure. We wouldn't end up with, you know, 2 shots on target and 26% possession or whatever it was. Now I am aware that can be copied and pasted and used against me, you know, in the future. You know, so be it. That's just what I believe to be the case. I do think we will control more of the ball than we have done recently. He's got big boots to fill. And I do think that, and if you're going to measure him against the trophy success, then, you know, he's going to have quite big boots to fill. But if you start measuring it in terms of someone that can help us qualify for Europe, I think if he is here for 2-3 years, I think he'll do it. I think it's easier to qualify for Europe than it used to be. Let's be fair. You know, it's seven places. You know, sometimes if you're lucky and your coefficient goes for you, it can be 8 places in the league. I think that's doable at some point over the next 2 or 3 years. So I don't subscribe to this theory that because David Moyes has gone, the European adventure is over. There are plenty of managers at West Ham who would have qualified West Ham for Europe had it gone down to 7th or 8th place. It never traditionally used to. There's more European competition. They're always getting expanded. They're bigger. They're bolder. I was going to say better. Not so sure about that, but I think he can do it. I'm looking forward to it. So there you go. I've waffled on for another 13 minutes. Can't help myself. I can't stop talking. So it probably helps with the whole video thing, to be honest with you. There we go. End of the season. I've got to say, I'm already looking forward to the next one. I really am. I can't wait, and I'm really pleased that this news has come out now.